Hello, Elf from Anella Visuals here. In today's video we are following up the last tutorial in which we modelled and UV unwrapped a pendant light by a company called Foscarini. If you want to follow along with that tutorial, I'll pop a link up above. If you want to go straight in with this one, we're going to be looking at using the Substance in Maya plugin, a little bit of tri-planar projection, and a little bit of procedural texturing as well. If you want the project files, sign up for our newsletter, and as a part of that subscription you'll be a community Anella member and you'll gain access to a Google Drive folder in which we will be uploading resources, assets, textures, scene files, cheat sheets, loads of cool stuff. I'll pop a link to that in the description below, and yeah, let's get started. So first things first is we want to get some lighting going that looks similar to this. So we can see that it looks quite flat, but actually there are a few lights around in the scene. We've got this back wall, we've got this sort of highlight on the left hand side here, and then we also have this diffuser, this LED diffuser as well. So I'm going to bring that over here and just leave that open. And first thing we are going to do is to create a wall. So polycube, let's give it a width of something like 200, height of 200, maybe I'll go a bit wider, 300, and then a depth of something like 5. And then let's push that back a touch. And whilst we're here, we'll just assign a new material, AI standard surface, and we'll call this M wall. And I think I already have an M wall, so let's just assign that one M wall. Okay, this shader is just 0.5 roughness, and that's about it for now. And let's give it a name. Okay, cool. Second thing is let's set up camera. So create cameras, and what I like to do with my cameras is scale them up so that we can really see where they are in the scene. And let's bring that back, and if we split our view and change one of those views to camera 1, and we can check on resolution gate here. And what I want to do with this camera, because just looking at the focal length here for this lens, it's probably a bit higher than this, so I'm going to go up to something like 125 and then readjust the camera. And just going to drop this down a touch and rotate it up a touch as well, because you can see we can see the actual diffuser underneath. I think something like this will be a good place to stop there. And with that camera, I'm going to lock it, this little padlock up here, and then I won't accidentally move it. Cool. So just to give myself a bit more space over here, I'm going to go 1080 by 1080 in my render settings, so it's square, and then I can push this over a bit more. And just something that I like to do is select the camera, scroll down in the attributes, display options, and then I'll change my gate mask color to a darker color. And when we change the resolution here, our cable is just going out now, so I'll just unlock my channels by right clicking, unlock selected, and readjust. Okay, that's looking cool. Right, so let's start with this highlight over here, and I'm going to create an area light. I'm going to scale it up, move it back and off to the left, and then what we can do with this is actually look through it. So when we're selected on it, we can go panels, look through selected, and then if we select the object, hit F, then our light will pivot around that camera. It's not a camera, it's a lamp. It will pivot around it anyway. Okay, and then let's just start a render going in here by changing the renderer to Arnold. And I'm just going to dock this down here for a minute. Cool. So we can't see anything that's pitch black because we haven't given it any intensity or exposure. So what I'm going to do in this view over here, because I'm still looking through the light, if I use this little select camera button, that's selecting the camera, not the light, but we can see the light over here in the next to the camera shape. You can also just come out and then come over and select the light, or in your outliner you could select it there as well. So I'm going to increase my exposure here to something like 15, and then I'm going to decrease the spread. Okay, and I think what I will also do is just assign a metal shader to the metal holster, and that will help us get the position of this light. So for the metal holster, holster, and then let's increase metalness, and we're probably okay around that value for roughness. Okay, so with our light, let's go back into our light and maybe increase the spread a touch. And I'm also just going to increase the resolution here, and also the samples up to 3. So I'm not going to play about with this too much right at this moment. I know we need to adjust the camera again, but we'll do that in a minute. I'm just going to start getting some other lights in so that I can tweak these in a minute. And the background's being lit quite well, we can see that we've got sort of a radial. It's a bit brighter in the center, and then it's got a little bit of a vignette around the outside. So I'm going to pull in another area light, but the way that I'll do this, just to make it easy, is if I group this light, Control G, and then I duplicate the group, Control D, and then if I hit E for rotate, that's going to rotate around the light itself, so I can get it roughly in the position that I want it to be. Just rotating the group. And then if I reset this, and then with the light itself, I can position that wherever I need it to be. So I'm going to look back at my outliner, group 2. Just going to lower it a touch. And then I'm going to look through that. I'm just going to sort of point it over towards the wall. I've got a bit of an angle going on here. I think that's because my rotation values are a bit skewed. Okay, what I don't really want is too much of a highlight on the other side. Because we've got a tiny bit in here, but not to that level. So going back to my perspective view, and let's go back to our camera in here. And with this light over here, I'm going to increase the spread. Touch. I'm going to change the shape of this to a disc. And then I think I'm also going to just decrease the size. Just decreasing the spread so I can see exactly where the focus point is for this. Okay, I think something like that is looking good. If we're a little bit bright, perhaps. Yeah, something like that's looking good. Okay, so next let's do the diffuser, and for this I'm going to use a mesh light. So up to Arnold, lights, mesh light, increase the exposure, and check on light visible, increase the samples to 3. And if we have a look at this, we've got this sort of pinky reddy sort of fall off around the edge and a brighter part in the middle. And I think it's going to be quite difficult to get this going on just with a flat color or color temperature. So I think what because we're going to use a fill light to get this lit up underneath anyway, it doesn't matter too much if our exposure here is sort of dropped down a little bit. And the advantage of doing that is that we'll be able to see the colour of this light a little bit more. So with the colour, I'm going to give it a ramp. And I'm just going to move that ramp across. Just change the V ramp to a circular ramp. And then I'm just getting it to a point where I can actually see that circle. And then in my UV coordinates, I can translate the frame. I'm just trying to get it a bit more central. It looks like an eyeball at the moment. So once we have it central, we can then change the fall off to smooth. Okay, and then let's change our color here. So we want white where the black is. And then we want this sort of pinky, corally color. Okay, so let's drop the exposure a touch. Just turning off selection highlighting. Oh, that didn't work, did it? Show lights. We go back into this ramp. Okay, I can see a bit more there. Okay, and hopefully if we start bringing up the exposure a bit now. It's going to be a really subtle effect, but I think it will look quite nice. Okay, that'll go for now. Cool. So let's put a little, well, I'm going to call it a fill light. I guess it's not a traditional fill. It might be more of a bounce light. So we could imagine that this was the light that was bouncing back off the floor, perhaps, although it looks a bit more flat lit than that. I'm going to change the light shape to disk for this, and then let's increase the exposure. Not that much. Not that much. And let's try bring the spread so we can really see that. Make it a touch bigger. And then I'm going to look back through the camera here. So we can see here we've got a dark shadow around the right hand side of this rim. The left hand side is lit quite well, whereas it doesn't really look that way in our image. So just increase the exposure a touch more. Okay, and we can play about with this value a little in a bit. And then lastly, I'm going to put in a sky dome just to add a little bit of ambient colour, because it's not entirely grey here. It looks quite grey, but it's got like a sort of dusty colour to that as well. So let's increase the samples to 3. And then if we just drop the exposure and use colour temperature and perhaps go for something like, not that, 5200. If we bring some of that in, we can start seeing the colour here. And that might be a little bit red. Wow, not 500. Okay, that might be good if we just bring that back. And also what it's doing is it's also going to fill in those shadows a touch as well. So the shadows over here, when we bring in this, we are going to be bringing back some of those shadows. Looking back through my camera, and I think I need to just make this a bit bigger. So let's take that back to the viewport and open the render view, which is over here. And I forgot to say that I'm using my GPU at the moment with quite a high sample count, but when we get to the texturing part, we will want to switch that over to CPU because the substance in my plugin just seems to work a little bit more nicely with the CPU. Okay, we're not there yet, so we've got not too far off. Remember, we haven't got any textures on here. This is just the lighting. Let's put our render view somewhere. We put it above that? No. Let's move this up here. Sorry, a little bit of organization is a good thing. Okay. So our light over here on the left side, we need to have a little think about. I think we need to move this down a touch and possibly, yeah, possibly we need to decrease the spread a little bit. I might just start sort of creeping up with these numbers a bit more. Okay, I think we're getting somewhere close with that one. and I'm just going to increase the spread, increase the size a touch. Okay. Cool. So not far off here. Just before we get into the texturing part, I'm just going to shade the cable. So just going to apply a new AI standard surface, material, cable, and I'll call this 2 because I think I already have one. And let's give this, let's have a look over here. You can see that we've got a bit of gloss on there. So we're not too bad already with this. Okay, that's looking good for that. And then maybe for the holster. We'll probably break this roughness up a bit in a minute. But for now, that's good. Okay, so for the, let's just change my workspace here. Okay, so for the texturing, as we said previously, we're going to be using the Substance in Maya plugin, and we're going to be doing a bit of triplanar projection as well as a little bit of procedural stuff too. The Substance in Maya stuff is not going to be, we're not going to have loads and loads of different outputs. We're just going to use the base color, but I will show you, I will talk you through how to set that up if you did want to create a more complicated network. So the first thing you need to do is make sure that in your plugin manager, so Windows Settings Plugin Manager, that your Substance plugins are enabled or loaded. Okay, they will have been installed when you installed Maya, but if they weren't for whatever reason, then if you did a reinstall of Maya, you could select for them to be installed, or I believe that you can find the plugin on the Adobe website too. So if you haven't got it, you can go and have a little look in those places. With it loaded, you should now have a Substance drop down and also a shelf over here. So you can see here that we have some different samples already. You can come to samples, and I think I'll use a sample just to demonstrate what we're going to be doing and how it works. So with our concrete here, I think before we actually assign a concrete, just want to assign something that's going to be really obvious for us to see, and something like these bricks, these bricks are going to help us do that. So I'm going to middle mouse click and drag onto my light, and then I can close this. And what you'll have in your Hypershade window now is this substance node. Now, substance node, this is the driver behind everything, and you can see here that it's loaded a sbsar file, and when this is installed, it's installed to this directory. We have a few different options down here. Here it's our preview resolution. We have option to cache to disk, which is automatically enabled. We have our workflows, so we can select different renderers. We have our outputs. We have multipliers for changing the resolution. And then we have down here, these are the exposed parameters that were exposed as a part of the substance file. So whoever made the files will have made these parameters to be manipulated. So we can see all of this different stuff. So we'll get into that in a minute. First thing we want to do is, with this substance node, is select our workflow. So we're using Arnold, and then if you hit create network, that will then create a network. And the great thing about this is that everything is already plugged into a standard surface. So you can see here that you've got your roughness, and that has alpha's luminance checked on. We've got displacement shader, we've got metallic, we've got a bump with tangent space normals selected, we've got an AO map multiplied over a base color. So it's all, it's all proper. And so I'm just going to assign this material to this light as an example, and then I'm going to hit the render button. Okay, and then we've got some gnarly bricks on our lamp. Just going to change my camera to perspective, and I'm also going to turn on 3D manipulation just so I can use this like a viewport, really. Okay, we've not got the snappiest playback here, but if we go to the substance node, we could, if we're not too bothered about quality, we can drop this down a touch, bring back a little bit more. But also it's probably a good time to remember that I'm using the GPU, and whilst I'm using the GPU, and the reason that I said about the difficulty with the GPU, and maybe it's just a bug, maybe it's something that I'm missing, I'm not entirely sure, but when I'm updating these parameters down here, so if I'm updating the X and the Y, they don't automatically update in the render view, which isn't a massive problem because you can come to render and update full scene, and it will update, but it's just a little bit of a pain to have to do that every time that you change something. So what I've noticed with the CPU, let me drop my samples down. And also let's just drop the resolution a bit. And if you see this little pink square, it just means that you need to reload. So scroll to the top, hit reload. Okay, and then now if I make changes to this, you can see it updating live in the window much quicker. So yeah, that's why I was suggesting using the CPU. So this is really cool. We have access to all of those exposed parameters. We can change, the color. We can change dirt color, brick age, yeah, lots of cool stuff. Got different bonds. English bond. What does that look like? Yeah, got regular bond. Okay, not going to go through all the bonds, but what I will do is I'm going to deactivate some of these outputs. So I'm going to deactivate the normal, roughness, metallic, and height, and ambient occlusion. So I'm just leaving the base color. And when we do that, we just need to remember in the shader itself that we will just need to take these things out. So metalness is stuck at 1, but we'll bring that back down to 0. We'll want to delete the bump 2D node. And let's get rid of the displacement shader, and also that multiply divide we can bypass as well. Okay, so that's cool. We just got the base color going at the moment, and let's bring this up a touch. So we're going to be using this substance node, and we're going to find a concrete texture online. But just before we do that, we're going to be using triplanar projection, and a big part of the reason that in the first video we didn't spend a lot of time on the UVs is because I wanted to demonstrate how triplanar works. So triplanar projection is a great tool if you don't have any UVs or your UVs are not brilliant, and it's a nice way to sort of quick and easily get textures working on your mesh. You might have seen it inside of Substance Painter if you've used it, or Substance Designer, but it's been in Maya for many years, and to get it going on, what we have to do is add a new node, and we will start typing AI trip for AI triplanar. And then at the moment our base color is being controlled by this place 2D texture. So and it's using our UVs that look like this. And then so our place 2D texture node is controlling everything here. And then if I bring that back down to 1, and I'm just going to plug the triplanar in between my texture and the shader. So out color to the input, out color to the base color. And you can see now that the repetition has increased. So we're seeing a lot more repetitions here. And now we have these scale values in our triplanar. So if we drop that down, I'm going to go to 0.1, and that's still too small. Let's try 0.01. Maybe a bit too large. 0.04. 0.04. Okay, let's try that. Okay, that's cool. So it doesn't look much different to what we had going on with our UVs, but the great thing about this is that we don't need any UVs. So if I were to select this UV shell up here and delete it, we still have our pattern going on. Okay, I'm not saying that we should do this. You should really always try to have UVs, but you might be receiving a model and the UVs might not be great, and you just need to get some textures going on. And this is a great way to be able to do that. The other thing that you can do, so you can do a few things in this triplanar node. You can rotate. It didn't look like it was doing much, but it is. You can see there. Let's just render a region. So we can rotate. We can offset. And then we can also blend. And what blending will do So I'm just going to zoom into this area up here, because we can still see a seam here, and we can also see a seam here. So triplanar projection, it's not magic. It will still be projecting the texture from X, Y, and Z. It just has some other it just has some more tools that enable us to use it sort of creatively. So it can be used for uniform objects, but where I find it works really well is for things like, you know, organic things, which is why we're going to use it for our concrete. But we have our seams here, and what you'll notice is that when I increase this blend, that the textures are blending over the seams. So you can see here that the blend, we're no longer really seeing the seams, but obviously our bricks are blending over one another. So like I said, it needs to be used sort of, it's a case by case really. We also have enable cell, and what that will do is it will actually create a sort of a Voronoi fracture sort of pattern. So you can see here as I rotate that around, let's take the blend out. Try and find this so it's really obvious. Can I isolate this? Let's just do that for a minute. So you can see as I rotate this, we have lots of different cells on here now, and they're all rotating around, and then we can also blend between those different cells. And I find this is a really great way to break up repetition as well. So I have quite a few tools here. We also have an input per axis, so we can have a different texture per axis, which is great. And Lee Griggs over on the Arnold site has some great tutorials about that. He shows a really cool one about how to put snow on top of objects. So go and check that one out if you haven't already. Cool. So that's the premise, you know, that's the sort of concept and the reason why we're going to be using triplanar. So just to bring this back to our concrete, what we can also do is, if we go up to the substance tab, we can go open substance share, and that will take us over to this amazing website where amazing artists from the community have uploaded their own work and their own textures and assets and things like this, and these are all available for you to download for free. You do need to sign in, and I believe you can sign in with a personal email address as well, so that's really cool. So the one we're going to be using is concrete, and I think I'll just use this one here, concrete 85. If you click on it and download that, there is a little web player so you can have a look and preview things. I already have this downloaded, so I don't need to download it again. And then what I will do here is I just scroll back up and load a different substance, and I will load the concrete. And then let's just check that we've actually got a texture in here. Let's just for now bypass the triplanar. And I might just update the render view. Okay, I think it is there. It just might be quite faint. So I'm going to just scroll down and just check that our luminosity and things like this are working, which they are. Contrast. Oh yeah, so let's increase the resolution up here. That's probably why we're not seeing very much. It's a subtle effect anyway. The base color for the concrete is quite, yeah, you can see it's quite subtle. So what I'm going to do is bring back my pure ref scene over there, and let's try and get the color going on first off. So let's bring the luminosity up a touch. And again, just for preview, I think I'll drop that just so we can see, have a snappier preview. And then maybe let's just bring a little bit of blue into the concrete color. Too much. It keeps snapping out of this every time I select a color. Okay. I think we're getting close there. To bring the texture back up. Cool. So not going to use much of the substance node for now. I'm gonna just hit the number 1 key to just neaten this graph up a bit. Oh, that was a misclick. Okay. Right, and what we want to do is, I think I'm just going to work a little bit on the displacement. So it's going to be really subtle, this displacement, and I'm not going to do too much. So let's place a displacement shader in and delete the shading group, and then take the output and put that into the displacement shader. And then we will use an AI noise, and we're going to, this is going to go into a triplanar node. So let's go AI triplanar, take the out color, and then we'll take the red channel and plug that into the displacement. And you can see we've already got something going on. If we select the mesh and then we go to the shape node in our attribute editor, go down to where it says Arnold, down to subdivision, you just want to make sure that you're using Cat-Clark subdivisions. Our mesh isn't perfect because it wasn't very uniformly subdivided when we actually modeled it, so that's going to have a bit of an effect on our displacement, but not too much. And we're using auto bump here as well, so you can see here we've got auto bump enabled. I'm going to keep that enabled for now, and then we will layer up a bump on top as well. So where it says scalar value, if we put 0.5 in here, you can see that the shape just starts to match a bit better. if we then, I keep clicking with my vertical mouse. Oh, where's it gone? It's fired off all the way over here. Where have you gone? Can I grab that? I could probably just rearrange the graph here. Graph. Rearrange graph. There we go. Cool. So I'm going to decrease the scale. And I'm going to go to something like 0.3, 0.03. Something very small value. Just going to check that I haven't got any rogue metalness in here, anything like that. My roughness is set to 1. And we're going to break the roughness up in a minute anyway, but okay, so with our noise, I'm going to basically use this as our scale, really. So I'm going to increase the noise here a bit, and I might just increase the scale whilst we're working, not to that 0.3. Okay, and I want a little bit of a higher frequency for this. Just sort of looking at this stuff in here. I think let's go to 5. Perhaps to 2. And let's just take the edge off the black and the white. And add in a bit of distortion. Okay, and then I think what we can do with the triplanar is if we enable cell and just break that pattern up a bit by adding a bit of rotation. Cool, obviously it looks awful at the moment, but we're going to dial this back. So, like I said, let's go to 0.05. Already we're looking better. I think let's just make our render view slightly larger here. Okay, we're a bit bumpy. See here, we're quite a bit smoother. So I'm going to drop that down to 0.02 just to get a subtle effect going on. We've got quite a bit more breakup on the side, but I'm not too concerned with that, and I think this is not looking too bad. So with that in mind, I'm going to have a look at trying to get these little pocket holes going on. And I could use displacement, but as I said, our mesh is not perfect, you know, for us to get those little holes with the displacement. So with that in mind, I'm going to use a bump. And it will be a bump 2D. So we want a bump 2D node, and that will go into the normal camera. And then we're going to use a ramp texture. And this is how we're going to get our little circles. And then with the ramp, let's just take that into the surface shader so that we can really see what's going on here. Change our ramp to circular ramp. Bring this in here. You can see we've got something going on. Obviously we're still using the UVs and we want to be using the triplanar. Okay, so yeah, that's looking better. Lots of little dots. Okay, so let's take this into our bump. And then take the standard surface back in and have a look at what we've got. And we've got some sort of crazy perforated thing, which is not entirely what we want, but we're on the right path. So we want to decrease the size of these. We can do that using our ramp here. If we bring that back a touch, and then maybe we could bring up. We can have a play around with the interpolation to see if we're getting any slightly different effects. But we don't want to go this far because you can see that these holes look like they're going in quite deep, and obviously we can see the end here. So I think it's better to leave the black on the left. And then let's just go and have a look from the camera. At the sort of size that we're looking at here. Okay, we're still a little bit big. But I think once we change if we have a look at changing the scale in a minute with our triplanar, that will help a bit as well. So we need to give it a bit of randomness here. I think the way that we want to do that is using this enable cell, and then we can sort of use this rotation. We want to take the blend out. And then we're getting these strange little lines here, which I'm not minding too much because they're just going to look from a distance like subtle, variation. However, I am just going to see if decreasing the size has any effect. Increasing the blend just seems to be happening with our cell enabled, and when our blend is down. I think maybe this will work actually. Can't see any lines. Yeah, this is looking good. I think let's just change the size here. Okay, that's looking cool. And we could even break this up a little bit further if we wanted to. Let's go back to perspective shape. You see, because they are everywhere at the moment. And if we have a look at another one, you can see they're sort of in clusters. And the way that I would do that is the powerhouse that is the AI noise node. And we can take the, if we take the, what do we want? The out color R, and we go into the bump depth. And then we're going to be clamping these values. If we isolate this, we could sort of bump up amplitude to clamp, but I think better practice is to insert an AI range. So go out color to input, and then we'll take the red channel from the range into the bump depth, if we can find it. And then we'll do the clamping in that node there by bringing, we're not, there we go, by bringing our value up like this. I'll just leave it as 0 at the moment so that we can actually see what's going on. And let's decrease the scale and just get some slightly larger shapes. Some slightly larger shapes going on here. I'm not too concerned with it not running this through the triplanar, because this is going to be a mask for the bump anyway, so it's not the end of the world. Okay, so let's, with the range, let's bump up these values and bring the max down. And now you can see that the white spots have the dots in. We might just need to play around a little bit with that. We can change the time to act as a bit of a seed here. If we want to see this a bit more easily, with the range selected in the render view, you've got this little padlock down here. If you click the padlock, and now when you come back to your AI noise, it's not changing back to this. So now when we manipulate this, we're still previewing with the range on there as well. And now we can see that we've got some white patches on the top, and that's sort of what we want, because you can see from the picture that we've got quite a few little pockets here and then a few along the rim. Might just bring that clamp back a little bit. And we're viewing that. I might just increase my resolution here. We've not got many on the rim. Got a couple over here. Okay, it's looking a bit better. Let's try and shift them over to the right a little bit, the left a little. Okay, that's looking cool. I think let's just have one final look at the ramp. What are we previewing here? Let's uncheck the padlock. Check back on the padlock. Yeah, I think that's just going to change the size a bit too much for us. Okay, I'm happy with that. Happy the way that's looking. So, roughness. Just need to break up the roughness. I'm going to rearrange the graph. And yeah, very similar to what we've already been doing here. I'm going to use an AI noise. I'm going to take the red channel. I could go into a range, but I think I'm going to be alright with this. You can see at the moment, because I've got color 1 is black, that we're very glossy. So we're going to want to, in the reference, we've got some nice little flecks in here, so these parts would be a little bit more glossy. However, not to this extent. So let's change our... Oh, I'm still looking at the other node. Okay, so increase the octaves, I think. Increase the scale a touch. And then we've got, so white is super matte, and then black is glossy. And we can see we've got like a little bit of a sheen up here. Starting to get a bit of a sheen there. I might just reverse these. Getting some little flecks in there. I think let's decrease the size here a little bit. And maybe increase the distortion. And I want to add in a bit more color up here. So I think what I'm going to do is, well, I'll just go back into the substance node and try and get a bit more color in. Whoa, not that much. Seems to be all or nothing here. 0.45, 0.49. Too much. 0.46. Not enough. That's better. And let's just go up to 0.5. I'm just going to come over and have a look at the auto bump and have a look what it looks like without that on. I don't think I'm really liking it as much with auto bump off. I think it's just the roughness that we need to have a little look at here. So let's isolate selected. Just something that's saying the roughness. I feel like it needs to be slightly larger shapes. So let's try that. There we go. We're getting a bit more of that sheen there now. Just wondering if that wrapping around is coming from the base color. Okay, I'm happy with this. I'm happy with the direction this is going. So I could spend a bit longer working on this, but I'm very conscious of your time. So I think let's just wrap this one up and a couple of final touches. I want to just check that this is actually in the image. It just looks like it's sat above. Oh no, I've got it sat above the I think it's because of the angle we're at. With the holster, I'm not sure if it is a brushed metal, but I think it's going to help just break up the sharpness of that. So really easy to do this with another AI noise. And if we take the out color R, the spec roughness, and then all we really need to do is increase the Y. And you can see as we start increasing the Y, we're getting this sort of brushed effect. We're going between black and white here at the moment, so that's why it looks so intense. So let's go up a bit higher, and then let's go a bit closer together with the roughness. It's a really subtle thing. And if we decrease the color, and I think it's just the intensity of the light now, which is maybe a touch off. Let's try 16, and then it has quite a large effect on I think let's just finally pump up the luminosity 0.51. Now I'm just going to tweak the lighting a touch. And just bringing these down a touch. I think we're almost there. If you'd like access to the project file for this scene and exclusive access to high-end models and any future resources that we share with our community, make sure that you use the link in the description below and sign up for our monthly newsletter. Cool, see you for the next one.